This is a 1999 Toyota Camry with a 5S FE engine. It has 356,000 miles on it. And it has a welded forward clutch in the transmission. So now we get to change the transmission.
Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. That's not nurturing people. And the 10 Commandments, weren't they written for white people?
So now we got a fully custom rust colored header. I'm gonna get this air box out of here. Check this out.
Right there.
Get the battery terminals unhooked. And whatever you do, don't put the battery on the ground for no reason. We got the wiring harness here. Compressor and the power steering pump are off the motor. All the hoses are undone. This is just sitting here. So the only things left connecting the engine and trans to the car are 3 engine mounts and 2 CV axles. So of course I've built a gallows around it for an engine hoist, and I gotta put it up on blocks. That'll work. I have to undo the axles and then put bolts in their place and then set it back down on its wheels so I can roll it out from under the gallows when it's time to do the engine. Here's the engine. And here's the engine bay of the car. Quite a lot of caked up grease, dirt and stuff over here. This engine's kind of clapped out. These bolts were missing. These are missing. That one's backed out to where it's going to fall out soon. See, it's just sitting there. And that one was loose, but I tightened it. And this one down here is missing. There wasn't one bolt that was tight holding this on, really. It's getting ready to just fall off the engine. Guess I'm going to take this thing apart. These intake ports are looking pretty gross. That's what HER does for you right there. Cams look alright. Nice and shiny. The timing belt looks like crap. It's loose. It's got like chunks of stuff on it. There's grease all up in here. So now we're at a junkyard. And we found this car. And it's got an engine and transmission in it. And the transmission fluid is red. And the engine is seized. It's got metal shavings in it and stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know about the engine. But I don't care about the engine, I care about the transmission, and we're going to take a gamble on the transmission being okay on this thing. So we're going to take this home. So now begins the process of switching out parts between this engine and this engine so that we can have one decent engine. And if we're really lucky, we'll have one decent transmission. Then we'll shine everything up pretty and pretend like it's new. I got the firewall clean. It had this layer of like black fiberglass stuff on it. I don't know. With that off there, look, now you can see the middle. It's the timing belt cover. It's a little hot right there. It's melted. And look at all this shit. Stop at top dead center. Cylinder 1 at compression. So this is what the camshaft looks like. That's the crank position. That cam lobe is pointing to the tooth. It's just to the left of the bolt as seen from here. There's a little bit of scoring on that bearing there. See? They're not looking so hot, but we're going to leave them just like they are. There's the buildup in the cylinders. There's the valves. They don't look that bad, do they? Quite a lot of buildup on this spark plug though, huh? Look at that. There's the transmission on the ground. And there's the engine up on a pole. I'm not an expert mechanic, and any expert mechanics watching this video will be able to tell you that. But I don't think this is normal. Is it? Well, anyway, that's looking kind of chewed up. Also, that's where the torque converter bolts were hitting this plate. See? You know, and then there's that chewed up bolt right there. That bearing's not so good. Here's the oil pan. Looks like something's broken off of the oil pickup tube, or the strainer here. And there's no balancer. See a little lining peg thing there? Those holes. It's supposed to be a balancer assembly under the crank, and it's not there. That's pretty cool that it's missing the balancing shaft. And I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to do anything about that either. But I guess I'll clean that metal out of there. The screen's still good. That's cool. That's not factory. The washer's been sawed in half. And it's sitting there holding in a bolt, it looks like. Sitting in one of the mounting holes for the balancer. That plug looks an awful lot like where you would put an oil pressure gauge. It's next to the oil filter, and straight down from it is the mystery bolt. That's the oil port that feeds oil to the balancer. Plugged with a bolt. Held in place by a bolt. It wasn't very tight. Nothing on this engine is that tight. Bruh. I was not expecting that. I'm having a hard time getting this sprocket off of here. See, it's got the little puller holes. You can't really pry it off without worrying about breaking those things. Autos, and a guy at the counter said, "Boy, been doing this."
I don't speak to you. I don't know you.
So you ain't got the harmonic balancer off yet, then he went on to say, "I've been doing this 50 years. I ain't never seen one not just slip right off." I don't know, man. I'm not a mechanic either. Anyways, I got these bolts here. These bolts. And I got the alternator adjusting bracket thing. I'm going to make a puller using these. Using this setup, you can easily pull the sprocket off. And I don't need to buy no puller. These bolts come out the top of the timing belt cover, and these nuts hold on the intake manifold between that stuff. Even if you've been doing this 50 years and you ain't never seen one not fall right off, you can, get this sprocket off without having to buy a puller. Look at it, it's all cleaned up. It's a patchwork of rust and flaking paint. Quick and dirty paint job. I only really give a shit about this one surface, so that's the only one I really cleaned. I didn't even bother masking this off for cleaning it. I sprayed that, but it's just going to come off. Who cares? And as for the donor transmission, look at that. See? Painted black. The whole damn thing black. So. Oh well, too late now. It's already painted. And with that complete, I can now finally start to reassemble this engine. Look how clean I got the pistons. I scratched the shit out of them with a wire wheel. See? I would love to hear all about how this engine isn't going to run. But if you're going to post that, post it now instead of at the end of the video. Oh yeah. Well, here's our original timing belt put back. See? It's in time now. That wasn't before. I don't know who put the yellow mark or the green mark on there, but I remember it being lined up with the green mark when I took it apart. That lines up, that lines up. So apparently it was one tooth at a time for the last few years as I've been driving around. This is half the mounting bracket to one of those sensors I don't plan on putting back. Our state-of-the-art cleaning technology. We're able to get our intake manifold perfectly clean. Here's the junkyard engine. You see this little metal peg and this little metal peg. Those exist for lining the engine and transmission up. You're supposed to, you know, slip that into a little hole in the back of the transmission. Well, here's the pins from my engine. They came right out, and you can see they're all jacked up. So we just didn't use them. We just bolted it together without them. There are no alignment pins. They're chilling here. The header's not rust color anymore. Now it's cool kid color. I got the fitting there for the oil pressure gauge. There's 3 vacuum lines right here. These 2 went to the EGR modulator, and this one went to the EVAP purge valve, I think. Well, yeah, those are getting plugged too. That clogged up, shitty looking port on the intake manifold. And that little gasket. And this weird compression fitting back here on the head are for the EGR valve. We don't want to put back the EGR valve because, you know, EGR valves are garbage. So we're just going to put back this part. Check out the awesome transmission fluid, ferro fluid. It's not too bad. That's how the transmission looks on the inside. So for the EGR valve, we're going to take our brand new EGR gasket, we're going to put it here. Then we're going to put our custom sheet metal block off plate here. Then we put the skeleton of our EGR valve here. So all we have to do to get this in here is line up these 2 little pegs sticking down from the transmission, those 2 holes. And line up that little thing there with that peg. Seems simple, right? So the bottom half of the EGR valve gets raised shut. See? And then you just attach that to the engine like you normally would. First start time. Got a temporary oil pressure gauge set up like this. Batteries in with a bungee cord. The fuel injectors and coils are unplugged.
Fell off.
There's definitely one cylinder that's a little off from the rest. Just I'll plug in the ignition coils and the fuel injectors. It's going to take a few tries to get the fuel injectors all cleared up.
That was a little bit of blowback.
That thing's called the map sensor. The engine can't run without it. This is how that's looking now. Look at the cool dotted line in the oil hose. I got my bungee cord battery, I got my plumbing intake. The alternator hasn't melted with the exposed header tube right next to it, so that's nice. Got this going on. I broke those sensors taking the other motor apart, and that's how that's wired for now. It's the temperature sensors. So now I can drive a car. I don't know what's going on. I just know what the police said. I've just drained the transmission that I took off. This is the transmission fluid out of the old transmission.